Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining the webinar today. Just before we start, for some reason, my camera isn't working, so you'll have to just listen to my voice and obviously the PowerPoints, but that shouldn't be a big one as far as I'm concerned, and I hope you guys don't mind. Another quick one. I'm sitting here in an area where there is some construction going on, so I've got some background noise. Once again, I hope it isn't going to interfere too much with the quality of the webinar today or the quality of the sound. I've done as much as I can to minimize or to put myself in an area where the interference of the construction going on has been minimized. And yeah. Before we get started, my name is Alex Schroder. I see that we've got quite a good number of people here today. For those of you that know me, that have been following my webinars and attending my webinars, hi, welcome back. We've got some compliance consultants on, fantastic. For those of you that don't know me, feel absolutely free to stalk me on LinkedIn and go and find out more about who I am. I'm not going to spend time telling you guys who I am and what I do. But as I said, you are more than welcome to have a look at my LinkedIn profile if you are thus inclined. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. We are going to have time at the end of the webinar today for questions. However, if for some reason, if there isn't time to answer your specific question, or even if after the webinar, be it today, over the weekend, next week, if any questions do come up that you do want answered, please email those questions to info@aicp.edu.au and the AIC team will forward your email onto me. I do need to ask though, if you do email questions through, please include your mobile number, because sometimes depending on the complexity of your question, or actually the complexity of the answer to your question, it may just be easier for me to just pick up the phone and just have a chat with you rather than email you. Guys, our future webinar topics is available on the AICP website, aicp.edu.au/webinars. If the webinar page hasn't been updated today, it will be updated by next week, but always keep an eye out for what webinars we are running. Quick one, ASCO audits and current regulatory activities. Guys, now that the election is finished, all of the government agencies, including ASCO, have gone out of caretaker mode. Because remember, when a federal election is coming up, all government agencies go into caretaker mode until such time as the election results have been finalized. So like I said, ASCO is now out of caretaker mode and they are back doing their audit trails. They are back auditing RTOs, They're doing a lot of audits when it comes to cry-cost providers. So if you're a cry-cost provider, please make sure that you are at all times audit ready. Not only that, guys, remember, for those of you that were here when we spoke about transitioning to the 2025 standards, remember we discussed that your RTO must make sure that it was compliant as of the 30th of June, that it was compliant with the 2015 standards, so that when you roll over to the 2025 standards, you only need to focus on compliance of those standards. If you are audited before the 30th of June 2026, there is a very good chance that your ASCO auditor will be looking at your operations under the 2015 standards as well as the 2025 standards. As I said when we were discussing this in the previous webinar, it would be such a shame for any RTO to be at all the time to be compliant with the 25 standards, but then to fail audit under the 2015 standards. So once again, please make sure that as part of your transition plan to the 2025 standards, that you do an audit on your operations under the 2015 standards. Since I ran the webinar about that, we've had a number of RTOs come and say, hey, can you guys please come and do an audit for us on the 2015 standards? And guys, we are and we have, and we've actually also we've got more of our audit team members that we have freed up time for them. So we do have capacity, or we should have capacity. So yeah, like I said, please make sure that you do your audits on 2015 standards. Of course, you don't have to ask VetPrep to do it. Contact your compliance consultant to do it by all means, but just get it done. Your certificate of attendance for today's webinar will be sent to you within 48 hours. If for any reason it doesn't arrive, please email the guys at info@arcp.edu.au and they will organize it for you. However, when your certificate arrives, you'll get an email very similar to this. It comes from RTO PD, and it's sent out automatically by GoToWebinar. And we'll have the topic for today's webinar on there. You'll see here where I've got this yellow circle. In your email, there'll be that button that says My Certificate. Please click on it and download your certificate. The certificate emails, they do have an expiration date, so please keep an eye out for that email and download your certificate as soon as you can. If for any reason your certificate doesn't arrive in your inbox, please check your spam folders. And as I said, if it's simply because sometimes it happens that, GoTo is meant to send out certificates and it just doesn't. If you have a problem like that, as I said, please email info@arcp.edu.au and the guys will sort it out for you. Okay, now that we've finished all the housekeeping, what are we looking at today? So we're looking at whether an RTO needs to enter into a third-party agreement with your contract trainers and assessors. And it's a question that, look, generally, there's a lot of RTOs that are asking this question. Under the 2015 standards, ASQA did publish a notification, or I think they published it. They either published it or they made it clear that contract trainers and assessors did not need a third-party agreement. We haven't heard the same from them with the 2025 standards. So in order to ascertain whether the NVR Act actually requires contract trainers and assessors to enter into a third-party agreement with the RTO, I've gone into the NVR Act, and as most of you know, I'm a bit of a law nerd. So for me to sit there and analyze the Act was so much fun. It really was. But what we've done is I've actually gone into the NVR Act and I've read it, and I think by now I know the NVR Act far better than what is healthy, that and the 2025 standards. But as you'll see as we have a chat today, I've analysed the requirements of the third-party agreements. I've had a look at the exception to third-party agreements requirements, and I'm also going to go through with you the justification of whether or not third-party agreements are applicable to contract trainers and assessors. So I'm not just going to say to you guys, hey, here's the answer. I'm also going to explain to you where the answer comes from and also what the justification is, just in case you are in an ASCO audit and your ASCO auditor looks blankly at you and says, well, your contract trainers and assessors need third-party agreements. By the end of this webinar, you will have enough of an understanding of whether or not what the ASCO auditor is asking for is actually correct. So let's have a look at the NVR Act's definition of third-party arrangements and what the exceptions are. So, and guys, this is copied and pasted straight from the NVR Act. I didn't go and reword it or rewrite it. There was no need for it. So the NVR Act, in the definitions, it says that third parties mean any person who has an arrangement with an RTO to deliver services, but it does not include employees of the RTO, experts engaged by the RTO, and or government agencies, etc. And that's basically what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be having a look at that definition of third party or who third party persons are. And we're also going to have a look at, I think it's standard 3.1 of the 2025 RTO standards, and see how those are all knitted together. So when we have a look at what the requirements are for trainers and assessors, Section 1A and Section 1B of the credential policy requires trainers and assessors to have all of these credentials. They've got to be TAE qualified or have a higher ed qualification in adult learning, or they've got to have a secondary teaching qualifications plus some skill sets as well. And even for the trainers, the assessors who do assessment only, they've also got to actually hold the assessor skill set. And then it gets even more interesting because for the TAE providers that are in the webinar today, as you guys know, that for anybody to deliver training and assessment from any training product within the TAE training package. And guys, when I say any training product, I'm not only speaking about the full TAE courses, I'm also speaking about TAE skill sets or a unit of competency from the TAE training package that your RTO might deliver. Any person that delivers anything from the TAE training package actually needs a level 5, an AKF level 5 TAE qualification, or a higher level qualification in adult learning. For them, the TAE 4 isn't sufficient. Then we flick onto standard 3.3 of the RTO standards. Apologies, it wasn't standard 3.1. Standard 3.3, as we can see on the screen, says that anybody who delivers training and assessment for an RTO needs to, apart from what we've seen in the credentials policy, apart from their TAE qualifications or their higher ed qualification, they also need to have industry competencies in the training product that they are delivering. Now, industry competencies, that can, as it was in the 2015 standards, that can either be by being able to demonstrate that they have enough industry knowledge and experience to be able to to be able to map over their competencies to the unit of competency, or it can also mean actually holding the AQF documentation for what they're delivering. So the trainers and assessors that are delivering for your RTO, they've got to have industry competencies. They've actually got to know what they're talking about when it comes to the training product that they're delivering. They've got to have the relevant skills. They've got to have skills relevant to what they are delivering. They've got to have knowledge in what they are delivering, at least to the level of what they are delivering. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you have got a trainer and assessor who is who delivers from the advanced diploma of business. I don't even know if an advanced diploma of business is still there. But let's say that you've got a trainer and assessor who is delivering the advanced diploma of business. That means that that trainer and assessor that does that delivery, they need to have the industry competency of that qualification, or they need to actually hold that qualification themselves. So a person who has a diploma of business, unless they can actually demonstrate that their competencies are at advanced diploma level stage, obviously they can't go and deliver the advanced diploma. Ditto with, let's say, for argument's sake, a Cert 4 in aging. People that deliver the Cert 4 in aging, they need to have that qualification, or they need to have the industry competencies at least to that Cert 4 level. If they can't demonstrate that they have the industry competencies, and or they don't hold that actual qualification and the units within the qualification, obviously they're not able to deliver it. So we've said that the trainers and assessors that are delivering your training and assessment must have the industry competencies relevant to what they are delivering, to at least the level that they are delivering it at. They've got to have skills in the training product that they are delivering, and they've also got to have the knowledge relevant to what they are delivering. And the reason for that is obviously, or it's very obvious. We, as trainers and assessors, when we are training people, obviously we want to, or our learners want to be learning from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. I always use the example of if my son decided to go and work on a construction site. One of the requirements before a person can go work on a construction site is that you must hold the white card. Now, if my son had to go and, like I said, go and work on a construction site, when he goes and does his white card course, I would want him to learn from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, versus somebody who basically just reads out the words and actually doesn't know what they're talking about. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep my kids safe. It's exactly the same with our learners, regardless of what we are delivering. Our trainers and assessors need to have the industry competencies, the skills and the knowledge, so they can provide the best learning opportunity and the best learning journey for their learners, and that they can also train from a point of authority, from a point of really knowing what they're talking about. Another thing that our trainers and assessors must do is they must undergo a regular vet PD. They've got to conduct, they've got to undergo or participate in a number of vet professional development activities, so that their knowledge of delivering learning to adults actually stays current, so that they know what's happening in the world at the moment vis-a-vis learning trends, etc. And so if we don't have trainers and assessors who got their TAE or their TAA certification years and years and years ago, but actually has no clue on what adult learning looks like these days. So just to recap, and guys, apologize for repeating myself, but this is really important. So to recap, all trainers and assessors must be qualified to actually deliver training and assessment, be it that they hold their TAE qualification, one of the TAE qualifications, or that they hold the secondary teaching qualification plus the skill set, or that they have a higher education qualification in adult learning. They also need to, as we said, have the industry currencies. They have to have industry skills relevant to what they're delivering. They need to have industry knowledge relevant to what they're delivering, and they've got to maintain their VET PD. Now, if we jump and we go, okay, why do we engage experts? And the reason why we're bringing up experts is, remember earlier on, we said that the NVR Act says that third parties means any person who delivers services on behalf of the RTO, but it excludes experts. So bear with me for a sec while I just jump back to the other lily pad. If we think about it, as RTOs, the RTOs that do go and engage industry experts to help with the delivery or to train learners on their behalf, we go to industry experts and we say, hey, can you please come and deliver this training for us in your field of expertise, because experts have the skills in their field of expertise, they've got knowledge, they've got industry experience, and usually they are also current, or they're currently working within the industry, or at least their knowledge and their skills and their experience within the industry is current. Then I did an interesting little comparison. If we have a look at the reason why we engage experts, and I had a look at what the NVR Act, the Credentials Policy, and the RTO Standards require from trainers and assessors in order for them to be suitably credentialed. An industry expert, we engage them for their industry skills. Trainers and assessors need to have their industry skills current in what they're delivering. We engage industry experts for their industry knowledge, but trainers and assessors also need to have current industry knowledge on what they are delivering. Our industry experts, we engage them because of their industry experience. And with trainers and assessors, although it isn't a requirement that they have industry experience, or it isn't an overt requirement that they have industry experience, when you have a look at the credentials policy and at standard 3.3, as well as the NVR Act, the intention of all of those three components is that our trainers and assessors will have industry experience. It might not be current as in at the moment or last week. Maybe their industry experience is a couple of months old, but the industry experience that we're looking at, or for industry experts, it used to be called industry currency in the 2015 standards. So realistically, we can say that our trainers and assessors also need industry experience or industry currency. Once again, industry currency, our industry experts, we engage them because of their industry currency, but trainers and assessors need to be up to date with current industry practices relevant to what they are delivering. So if we have a look at the difference between the attributes of an industry expert that the RTO may ask to help with training in a training product. If we have a look at the attributes, industry expert needs industry skills, so do trainers and assessors. They need industry knowledge, as do trainers and assessors. They need industry experience. Do our trainers and assessors, strictly speaking, need industry experience? Well, that one's debatable. The industry expert, we engage because of their industry currency, but trainers and assessors need to be current in their industry practices in any case. But trainers and assessors need to actually have more than industry experts do. They need to have the industry competency or the AQF certificate, i.e. the qualification, the skill set, or the unit of competency that they are delivering. They need their TAE qualification or their higher ed qualification in adult learning. And I understand that's so they can assess as well. However, trainers and assessors need to have qualifications in providing adult learning. And trainers and assessors also must maintain their vet professional development. So if we have a look at this table here, and this is the reason why I actually went and did this table, so we could have a look and it would be really clear in what industry or the requirements for trainers and assessors compared to the requirements of industry experts. So to me, the defining question is, are trainers and assessors experts? Can we actually consider them as experts? Because remember that the third-party arrangement requirements under the NVR Act excludes experts engaged by the organisation from the requirement to have a third-party agreement. Now, it is my belief and my understanding from analysing the NVR Act and also just speaking to a couple of other lawyers and just checking that my take on it was correct. Based on the definition of third-party arrangements and based on the fact that the NVR Act says that third-party or that experts engaged by the organisation, i.e. the RTO, are excluded from third-party arrangements and third-party agreements, I do not believe that trainers and assessors do require a third-party agreement, and I have no doubt whatsoever that ASQA will be confirming the same in the very, very near future. So once again, you'll recall that when I started, or in the very beginning with the slideshows, the PowerPoint slides, I did say to you guys that I wasn't going to only give you the answer, I was also going to provide the justification for the answer. And it's simple as the NVR Act excludes experts engaged by the RTO from a third-party agreement. And if we follow the logic of unpacking the expertise of qualified trainers and assessors, I've got absolutely no doubt that they are experts, because at the end of the day, our trainers and assessors actually need to hold qualifications, whereas our industry experts, we're not requiring them to hold qualifications. So if I have a look at the weight or the weight given to industry experts and to the expertise that we rely upon when we do engage an industry expert, and when I have a look at what trainers and assessors need to hold and what hoops they need to jump through in order to be able to deliver training. Excuse me one second, I'm just going to cough. I believe that my position that trainers and assessors do not require a third-party agreement is more than correct. And the interesting thing is that if you remember that at the end of this webinar, you'll actually also receive the PowerPoint slides that I'm using today. So you'll be able to just also you'll have time to be able to go and process what we discussed today. And if you are ever in an audit, in an ASQA audit, and the ASQA auditor says to you, hey, you should have had third-party agreements for your contract trainers and assessors, then I would use exactly this justification and say to them, no, trainers and assessors are experts, and the NVR Act actually excludes experts from the third-party arrangement requirements. Guys, having said that, remember that ASQA does have the power to come and make a decision or publish a direction that trainers and assessors do require third-party agreements, just as they have the power to publish a direction that says they do not. But until such time as ASQA has given us a definitive answer on it, I would be more than comfortable having this debate with any ASQA auditor at any regulatory audit if they were trying to argue the point, I'm being polite here, if they were trying to argue the point that contract trainers and assessors do require third-party agreements. And just a very quick one, remember your third-party agreements, they are there for when you have people or organizations or other businesses doing or helping your RTO with business operations. So for argument's sake, CRICOS providers use, by and large, use education agents in the recruitment of their overseas students. That is an absolute no-brainer. That's a third-party arrangement. Always has been and probably will be for at least the foreseeable future. Third-party arrangement, if two RTOs enter into a co-delivery arrangement or agreement, that's a third party. If your RTO uses a marketing firm to do marketing on your behalf, that's a third-party arrangement. Your contract trainers and assessors are not. And guys, just to touch slightly on the third-party arrangement, you would have seen in the beginning when the intro slides were there that I've just finished writing a non-accredited product called the Practical Guide to the Practice Guides, and also the RTO Standards Unpacked, or the 2025 RTO Standards Unpacked. And in both of those courses, I actually unpack further what our requirements are for third-party agreements and when services delivered falls under third parties and when they do not. And the reason why I say that is obviously I've gone into far more detail there than I could in a 1 hour webinar today. But yes, so for those of you that have actually already purchased the Practical Guide to Practice Guides, you'll find that there's more information on third-party arrangements in there. But once again, for the purpose of what we are discussing today, no, your contract trainers and assessors do not need to be subject to a third-party agreement. I'm now going to, I've seen that we've had some questions come up, and I'm going to have a quick look there. I'm going to go and try to go from the first questions in. So Colin, you asked, if you have trainers who hold the TAE in full, can they be considered as experts engaged as they are teaching what they are skilled at from an industry level? For example, licensed customs brokers teaching a diploma of customs broking. Absolutely. If they meet the other requirements, i.e. industry currency, VET PD, so what we've got, if they hold the TAE, they've got their diploma of customs broking, if they have their industry currency, and if they have their VET PD, absolutely. Okay, next one. Michelle, you say, Alex, thank you for your justification on the answer. Pleasure, Michelle. I do have a wider question though. Can there truly be contracted trainers and assessors, given that they cannot really delegate tasks and they need to follow the directions of the RTO? So, i.e. using the RTO's assessments, etc., might they actually be viewed as an employee in the eyes of bodies such as the ATO? Michelle, yes, the ATO would, in all or in a lot of circumstances, the ATO does look at contract contractors in general, they do have the rule of if you work under the organization's directions, etc., that you are considered an employee, not a contractor. However, that is a tax ruling. So that came out per tax ruling a while ago. And for the purposes of the NBR Act and of contract trainers and assessors, the question is, yes, they are still considered contractors, well and truly. But I'm going to just once again just clarify that is insofar as the context of the NBR Act. Please don't go to the ATO and say, hang on, you guys are wrong, because, yeah, it's obviously a tax ruling. Let's have a look at another one. So, Cynthia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. You've asked, how does this affect trainers and assessors working for third-party training and assessment partners who are subject to third-party agreements? So, how this affects partners that provide third-party contract trainers and assessors, and I know there's a few of them, is the agreement. So there's a third-party agreement between you and the business that provides the contract trainers and assessors, because the whole business relationship is between you and the company that provides them. And the business relationship truly isn't between your RTO and the contract trainers and assessors. So once again, your RTO will have entered into a third-party agreement, which would be registered with Asquith in your 30 days. They would actually enter. They would enter into a third-party agreement with a company providing the trainers and assessors, but not the actual contract trainers and assessors. Once again, guys, I'm trying to just answer them as they came in, so just bear with me. Colin, you've asked, you will still need a third-party agreement to cover the responsibilities of everyone, the expectations of everyone, and of course the remuneration expectations. When we look at the meaning of third-party agreements insofar as the NBR Act, as well as the requirement to lodge those third-party agreements with ASQA, I would not say that your contract trainers and assessors would be entering into a third-party agreement. There would be a separate commercial agreement between you and your RTO and the third-party trainer and assessors that covers the responsibilities, expectations, and remuneration, etc. But it would not be called a third-party agreement, because remember, third-party agreements have different meanings within the RTO sector, and especially in the context of the NBR Act. But yes, you would have a commercial agreement with them, and that agreement would not need to be lodged with ASPA. Next one. Give me a second. I've already done that one. Guys, just give me a sec. I'm just sort of trying to go, once again, going through the questions one by one. A really good question from Nadia. Nadia, you've said, thank you for the very clear information in today's webinar. Pleasure. Could I ask if we need a third-party agreement for a work placement organisation that hosts our students for their practical experience? Absolutely. Absolutely no doubt about it at all, because remember, a work placement host, when your students do go and do their work placement, they are actually undertaking learning and often assessments as well. So absolutely, your work placement host or your arrangement between your RTO and your work placement host is subject to a third-party agreement, and a third-party agreement must be lodged with ASPA. Janelle, you've asked, typically trainers and assessors are employees, if employed, or ABN sole traders. If contracted any other method, usually companies. And then your question sort of ends. Give me a second. I found the second half of your question. So if trainers and assessors, if they are sole traders or they have an ABN, they still do not need a third-party agreement. If they have set up a PTY limited company, then yes. But remember that the majority of contract trainers and assessors do have their own ABNs in any case for tax purposes. But in that instance, because they are a sole trader, you still do not need a third-party agreement with them. Next question. Jazel, I'm so sorry if I've got your name, if I'm mispronouncing your name. Okay, your question is, a mining company has their own training, assessing resources and trainers and assessors. Our RTO reviewed these materials and it's good and mapped. Basically, the RTO has input materials as well. This training is purely for the mining company's employees and our RTO issues the SOA. Is this a third-party agreement? Yes, it would be. Because, so if I can just go and unpack the information that you've given me, the mining company uses their own trainers and assessors who we are going to assume are properly credentialed. And actually, let's not make that assumption. If your RTO, Jazzle, is issuing SOAs based on the training and assessment delivered by the mining company's own trainers and assessors, you absolutely must make sure that those trainers and assessors are properly credentialed, and yes, making obviously also sure that their assessment tools are valid. But to get back to your question, yes, this would be a third-party agreement because your RTO is issuing the statements of attainment. Colin, you said thank you for clarifying all the points. It's such a pleasure. Those of you that come to my webinars regularly, you'll know that Fridays webinar days are just the highlight of my week. I absolutely love it. Michelle, you've asked, if an assessor, say, works 20 hours, I think, a day, over 7 days a week, consistently, they choose the hours they work, should they be an employee, even if they do other work? We are the main job, but they have other business interest. Okay, so Michelle, I think what you are asking is that if you have part-time casual contract trainers and assessors who choose only to work for your RTO part-time, should the RTO say, look, we want to make you employees? No, there's no requirement for that. You know, it's obviously up to both parties, your RTO plus the trainer and assessor involved, whether or not you want them to become employees, whether or not they want to be employees, but there's no requirement for your RTO, for any RTO, to say to their contract trainers and assessors, part-time, casual, whatever, that to continue working with us, you actually need to be an employee. Michelle Yang, with third-party agreements with work placement hosts, are there any resources we can refer to for third-party agreement templates? So first of all, guys, with your third-party agreements, please remember that you are entering into a legal contract with another business. And because you are entering into a legal contract with another business, I strongly, strongly recommend that you have a lawyer at least have a look over your third-party agreement based document, at least the first time, if not as updates are made as well, because once again, these third-party agreements are legal and binding contracts. They are commercial contracts, and you need to be very, very sure that what you have in your third-party agreement is obviously legally sound, but also doesn't hold a high risk of it coming back to bite you. Can I just see a raise of hands? How many people here would like a third-party agreement template? Okay, so guys, what I'm going to do is I will sit over the weekend. I will go and develop a third-party template, and then I will ask ARCP to let you know when that's available. It should be by about Monday, Tuesday, but there's enough people that have said yes, they want templates that I'll go and develop one for you guys. I hope that will help. So Michelle Yang, the second part of your question is what happens if the placement host does not want to enter a formal agreement for a once-off or a once-in-a-blue-moon placement? To enter into a third-party agreement, then essentially you need to use someone else. It's as simple as that. Francis, you say that in 2023, I was fined $48,000, wow, by the Victorian payroll tax as they audited me on my trainers and assessors and found some of my TNAs worked more than 90 days per calendar year. So the invoices were added to my company payroll, even though my TNAs worked for other RTOs and have their own ABN. I do have contract agreements. I also deduct. Okay. Colin, what you've shared is you've actually, and I'm sorry, I haven't read your whole message out loud, but basically, guys, Francis shared an ATO, an ATO situation that they occurred in 2023 because their system, their remuneration system of their contract trainers and assessors were obviously different than what the ATO ruling was at the time. That's a horrible thing to happen, Francis. You poor person. Ella, you've asked, so can I please clarify? If the RTO issues the statement of attainment training product but engages the training and assessment delivery services of a contract trainer and assessor, the RTO manages student enrollments. The trainer and assessor uses their own resources. The RTO provides the facilities. Would that be reported as a third-party arrangement to the regulator? Ella, first of all, I must just make a comment that to have a situation where your trainers and assessors use their own resources is hell of a risky. And especially their own assessment resources, because how do you know if those assessment resources are 100% valid? Has your RTO actually validated them? Secondly, if your RTO allows contract trainers and assessors to use their own assessment resources, if you have more than one trainer and assessor delivering the same training product, then you don't have consistency across your assessment resources. But also, let's say that the trainer and assessor that uses their own assessment resources moves on and stops working with your RTO. You actually don't have access, I would assume, to their training and assessment resources. So if any of you are currently in a situation where your contract trainers and assessors, actually where a trainer and assessor, be they an employee, part-time, full-time, contractor, casual, etc., if they are using their own assessment resources, please stop that immediately. Because you are, like I said, the risk that you're putting your RTO's compliance in is absolutely not worth it. But from what you've described, so Ella, I'm going to answer your question a bit differently. I'm going to ignore the fact that your trainers and assessors are actually using their own resources. If they are a contract trainer and assessor, and even if they are a sole trader, then you still do not need the third-party agreement. Your third-party agreement is basically there for a business-to-business relationship. So as we saw earlier on, remember I spoke about if somebody does your marketing for you, and that could be an individual or a business. So in other situations or in other circumstances where a third party is providing services to you, then those do need third party arrangements, but not your contract trainers and assessors. Amanda, you've asked if a student is responsible for arranging their own workplace for the placement, but not for the delivery of training. Do we still need a third party with a workplace? In this case, a workplace supervisor only observes the student and signs the logbook and the third party observation report. Absolutely, because remember, the answer is yes, you absolutely still need a third party agreement in place, because remember that even though your students are responsible, or even where a student might be responsible for sourcing their own workplace for their workplace hours, your RTO still needs to go into that workplace. It still needs to see that the workplace has whatever the equipment the student will need. It still needs to ensure that the workplace is safe, meets the requirements, basic requirements under the WHS Act, etc., etc., etc. So just because the student has to go and source their own workplace, it does not relieve the RTO from their requirement under the NVR Act to actually enter into a third-party agreement with that workplace. All right, let's have a look at questions. Janelle, let's have a look. A trainer assessor subcontracts via his business that is a PTY business. Please confirm that this is a third-party arrangement. Janelle, do you know that I am not 100% sure? So I can do one of two things. I'm going to ask you, would you mind emailing that same question to the ARCP team? So that is info@arcp.edu.au. And then when the guys forward it to me, what I'll do next week is I'll actually have a chat with one of the senior managers within ASQA and just ask them, because this one is, for me, my first instinct is no, it's still a subcontract. It's still a trainer and assessor who's subcontracting, but what I need to double check on is you are now speaking about a business-to-business relationship, i.e. the relationship between your RTO and their PTY Limited business, and that's something that I do want to get clarity on. But like I said, please email that question, because otherwise I'm going to forget. Jazzle, you have started writing a message, but I think you might have pressed enter before you had finished it. Guys, Nav, let's see. Give me a second. Nav, you've said you would like to the answer to that question as well. Please do the same thing. Please raise the question with ARCP, and that way I won't forget to also get back to you on that answer. So, Giselle, you've said, sorry guys, I had this pregnant pause. I was just reading the next question. Giselle, you've said, based on what I understood from your presentation, if you have a signed MOU with a mining trainer and assessor to carry out training assessing, isn't this like having expert to deliver training, which is not a third-party agreement? It depends. In the situation that we discussed earlier, the trainer and assessor in the mining company actually worked for the mining company. Now, remember that if you have industry experts, and I'm assuming that in this instance, the trainers and assessors do actually hold their TAEs. So when the NBR Act speaks about experts, they are really speaking about experts that are not working for the RTO, or in this case, the mining RTO. But, Jazzle, I'm thinking that I haven't really answered your question properly. So what I would like to do is, won't you please email ARCP with that question and include your mobile number, because I think I'd actually like to just have a chat with you about that one. Rula. Okay, so Rula said they had a contract trainer, even with a PTY Limited. We had contracted trainer, even if a PTY company is only a single body, it was treated the same as an ABN contractor. Okay, so I think what Rula is saying is that they've actually had contract trainers and assessors that held their own PTY Limited company, and they were treated like a normal contract trainer and assessor, so a sole trader. So Nadia, you've asked, would an MOU be enough for a work placement organisation that hosts our students for placement? I don't know why it shouldn't be, but remember the MOU would still be lodged with ASQA as well. In fact, Nadia, I'm going to ask you, would you mind just emailing that question to me as well? Because I'm 99% certain, but if I'm going to be chatting with ASQA in any case to get clarification on the other one, then I may as well just ask this question as well. And then I've learned something, and I'm 100% sure. Guys, are there any other questions? We going on for 1 o'clock, and I know that we all want to, well, you guys want to get back to your day. So are there any other questions that you guys have for me? Awesome. Well, in that case, I'm going to say once again, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do enjoy these webinars, and I love spending the time with you on these webinars. And once again, if there are any questions that we didn't get through, or if anybody gets, has other questions coming up, Michelle, including the one that you were just busy asking, please just email them through. And as I said, our ARCP will forward them to me, and I will make sure that I get you guys an answer on your questions. Have yourselves a brilliant Friday, what's left of it. And I hope you guys have an excellent weekend, and I'll see you on the next webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.